and welcome to the Alpine Valley School podcast. I'm your host, Missa Gallivan, a former AVS student, a graduate, and a current staff member at the school. This is the 10th episode of the Alpine Valley School podcast, which marks a significant milestone for the show. Thanks to everyone who's written in and given me their feedback on the podcast, along with your ideas for the show, which include the idea for this episode. Because today's show is special, it's going to be a little different. Rather than conducting a one-on-one interview like I normally do, I've spent the past few weeks reaching out to 10 different AVS graduates currently scattered all over the world. In these interviews, I asked the graduates to answer the top 5 questions we get here at school and recorded their answers. And that's what you're going to hear today. I'm very excited about this show because not only does it tackle some of the main objections people often have to our style of education, how do students go on to college, and so forth, but each graduate shares their individual outlook on these issues. I hope you'll come away from today's show with a broad perspective on different questions and a better appreciation for the product of an AVS education. Let's meet the graduates you'll be hearing from today.
I'm Xander Alford, and right now I'm sort of doing a mishmash of IT, cleaning microscopes, and construction.
Hi, my name's Josh Mann. I graduated in 2009, and I am a marketing supervisor for Costco.
Hi, my name is Brandon Murphy. I'm a customer success manager at Cypress Data Defense and chief of sales of the Nice Guys Process Serving and Delivery, and I graduated in 2015.
Hi, my name is Andreas Suter. I graduated AVS in 2008, and I currently work in search engine optimization up in Conifer, Colorado.
My name is Ethan Welshon. I attended AVS for the entirety of my schooling career. I started there when I was 4 or 5 years old, and then graduated when I was 18. Now I work for a construction company as heavy equipment operator.
My name is Aubrey Suter. I attended Alpine Valley School for 11 years, I think. I graduated in 2008. Currently, I work with software engineering teams to help them improve the way that they work together.
I'm Bronwyn, and I graduated from AVS in 2005, and I'm now living in Oakland and working in San Francisco as a product designer.
Hi, my name is Jamie. I graduated in 2010 or 11, and I'm currently doing costume design for local theater, bartending, and living my best life.
Hi everybody, my name is Vanessa, also known as Vivi, and I was a student at AVS I graduated in 2004. I'm currently working at an organization called West Coast Women in Engineering, Science, and Technology, and I also have a podcast about the X-Files.
Hi, my name is Amy James, and I graduated in 2001. I was actually Alpine Valley's first graduate. I'm one of the founders of Alexandria.io. We are building blockchain media distribution.
Before we jump in, I want to acknowledge that the answers to each question are rather long, so it's possible you might lose track of what the question is while you're listening. I've tried to counteract this issue by adding a list of questions to the show notes for the episode. Navigate to www.alpinevalleyschool.com/podcast/EP10. That's for episode 10. So again, that's www.alpinevalleyschool.com/podcast/EP10 for the list of questions so you can follow along as the graduates provide their answers. With all that out of the way, let's get started. How are AVS students successful in college if they aren't used to a classroom environment?
I can't speak from personal experience, but theoretically speaking, I think if I were to decide to go to college, I would be one of those people who would want to get engaged. Sit up front, ask questions, talk to the professor after class, talk to other students, work with people, put everything that I can into the education because it's something that you choose to do. At AVS, you learn to take control of your education and you understand that it's your responsibility, and I think college is one of the best places to really let that blossom. and I think AVS prepares you for that.
I actually really loved my experience in college because I wasn't worn out, I think, on academia. I had a lot of fun, especially in like my first 3 semesters. I had a really different experience from a lot of my classmates too, I think, because I wasn't afraid to talk to my professors. And because I, really did most of my growing up at AVS and was used to just, adults being other human beings, I was able to talk to my teachers, get the most out of every class, really decide what I wanted to do. But yeah, I had no problem adjusting, really. And because of my experience at AVS and not being afraid to talk to adults, I was able to get through a lot of classes that I wouldn't have otherwise.
One thing that AVS does a really good job of teaching us is to always let our voice be heard. And that's something when I went to Red Rocks Community College for a period of time, something that transferred over for me was in these classroom environments, I felt very comfortable asking questions to the teacher and also socializing and interacting with the other students in the class in order to get any questions answered that I had. And that's something that I noticed was very rare in a classroom of that nature. Even in the classes where I struggled, I always found ways to get my questions answered and wasn't afraid to speak up in the classroom. And that was something that AVS taught me.
I attended community college. It really went okay. I didn't really take any math in school prior to college. So I took a couple of remedial classes and picked up on it really quickly. And just in sort of like a time-saving way, I learned all of the math I needed that people would have learned in traditional school over a high school career in like 2 semesters, and then was caught up to college level math.
One thing that happened pretty frequently when I was still attending AVS, probably around the time I was 16 or 17, was that I would talk with people and they would say, "What college did you go to?" And that was a fairly common occurrence. I think that, whether you choose to pursue a college education or not, as a graduate of AVS, you come into the world with the kind of background that allows you to engage with people in a way that earns their respect up front. And I think that really will serve you in school, out of school, on to whatever career you take, regardless.
I think that one of the sort of most important things about AVS is that all learning is self-directed. And so when you want to learn about X thing, you don't just have to learn about X thing, you have to figure out all of the pieces to make that learning happen for yourself. And so I think that those skills translate really well into college. We had a little bit more experience running our own lives and could kind of take on that balance.
When you're at AVS, you, as a student, learn how to balance your time because you kind of have to, because there's nobody there saying how you are going to balance your day and how you're going to schedule your day. It transitions well into college because you may have a schedule in college that's kind of been given to you, but it's more freeform than, say, a traditional secondary school. And so, you do have a schedule that you have to put together, but you have experience doing that when you're at AVS.
What sorts of careers can AVS graduates expect to have given their education?
You can get into any industry if you're tenacious enough. Like, a lot of people say that you have to go to college or whatever, but there's, more than one path to Mecca. And that's just sort of my belief about everything in my life, which I think is kind of thanks to AVS, is that, I never thought that I would be a bartender, for example, because people always talked about stuff like bartending school, but I just went to a local restaurant and talked to the owner and was like, hey, I'm really interested in learning this craft that I didn't know before, and I want to know it because it enables me to do theater work, because the bartending schedule works out with me being at the theater all the time, and it enables me to do my passion projects. How I balance my life is I pick a fun, easygoing place to work, and then I work on my passions as my projects. I can do both of these things that I really love doing simply because I was willing to ask for the opportunity to do it.
I think we can do anything we want to. We grew up not really being pigeonholed into particular classes. and we were allowed to learn what we wanted to. And if there was something that a staff member at AVS couldn't teach us, they brought in outside help.
Yeah, I think any career an AVS graduate goes into is that career is the job that they've chosen to do. And I think that carries a lot of weight with AVS students. And then you grow up in an environment where you're not forced to choose anything. When you choose to do something, it's because it's something you're passionate about and it's something you care a lot for. And I think those students and my fellow graduates that I'm friends with, they're all doing something that they love because they chose to do it. They chose that determination to get the job that they want, and they're all happy for it.
I think that an AVS graduate can expect to have any career that they want. It's just that in the AVS environment, it's on them to make that happen, right? So if they have the drive and the motivation and the initiative, if they want to learn how to be a doctor, then all it's going to take is to find somebody, whether it's inside the school or outside the school, who can teach them how to get on that path, right? And eventually they will get there. So I don't think there's any limitations on what you could do as an AVS graduate. It's just that you have to have that drive and motivation to make it happen for yourself.
I think that really depends mostly on the person and their interests. For myself, I've had careers, or at least jobs, in everything from maritime work as a ship's engineer to I was a technician for a geophysics company in Nevada. And really everything that I've wanted to try, I've done pretty well in, and then kind of had my fill and left. I think really, as far as career goes, it depends on the individual much more than their education.
I think the best way to get a feel for it is to look at what our grads have done, which is pretty varied. And I think we have seen graduates be successful in all different types of industries, at all different levels. And I'd say that a continuous thread that you can find from students who have gone on from AVS is the drive and self-motivation to follow these threads that they find early on in their education, because they're allowed to, pursue the things that they're interested in, and are actually given the time to sort of sit with themselves and develop self-awareness and discover what those things actually are.
I would say that people who graduate from this type of school go into all different types of fields. When graduates from this school enter a career, they do so very deliberately. I would say generally, once they kind of find something that they are passionate about and that they can make a living at, which sometimes takes a little bit of time, they're very focused on improvement. They're very unwilling to settle, and they're very successful at making things better wherever they are.
It's difficult because when you're 5, you might not realize that you want to be a scientist, for example. And if you want to be a scientist, you have to have a lot of years of experience. What's cool about AVS is that you're not limited to anything. I think even if you are like 17, you realize, wow, I'm really interested in science and I might want to have a career in this. You kind of just accept that you might have to work a little harder than other people, but that's totally fine. You can take your time to get where you want to go. Like, AVS really shaped who I am today in so many ways, even in just the 4 years I was there. And it's kind of like, of course I'd be an entrepreneur, of course I would own my own business.
I think that one of the true gifts of the time that students get to spend at Alpine Valley School is getting to know themselves and getting to kind of engage with their own curiosity, and not have that be stifled. When I was in 6th grade, I got in trouble for reading a book under my desks. I had it in my lap. We were getting a lecture on something and I was reading this book. And then as soon as they had us, and I was always a reader, I loved reading. And then as soon as they had us have to fill out this log and have our parents sign it that we had done the amount of reading we were supposed to do, I stopped reading and learned how to forge my mom's signature. But I think that knowing oneself and knowing what one wants out of life really can help people to be more successful in choosing careers that make them happy, And so I think that because we have that time and that space for curiosity, we have a better shot anyway at taking steps toward building a career that makes us truly happy.
If you let students choose what to do all day long, won't they choose activities that aren't beneficial to them?
I think yes. Yes, they will. And I think that's a good thing. I would answer that question with another question, which is, as an adult, are all of your choices beneficial to you? And then I think, why should our kids learn any other way other than being able to have the freedom to make their own choices, learn from those consequences, and then make better choices?
And here's my theory. I have a theory about when a student from a traditional learning environment comes into AVS, there's definitely a decompression period, which makes lots of parents nervous, is because they see kids just, what they perceive as goofing around all day. But during that time, I was able to pursue things that mattered to me and to discover what those things were. Because if you're in a classroom situation, you don't always have the space that you need to discover what you even want to do. And after a student figures out what they want to do, everything else just falls into place.
I think it's worth considering your own life, even in the past 5-10 years. If you haven't gone to school in that time, if you have gone to school, either way, you've learned an incredible amount. You might not realize it because it's sort of a part of your baseline, but kids are doing that, but at an accelerated rate because that's what they're made for, and they have so much to take in. And no matter what they're doing at AVS, they're learning how to be effective people.
I don't really like the idea that certain activities are not beneficial. I think most all activities have some benefit to them. By the same vein, I would say if you let somebody take advanced math classes and they hate math, that's not beneficial to them. So, in this vein, probably saying aren't they just going to sit around and get on the computer, and that's not beneficial to them? But how is it not, right? On the computer, they could find different information, they could learn different things, right? So there's benefits to, I think, all activities, and the beauty of AVS is that it gives you that option to find the activities that are beneficial to you versus a more traditional school where you're kind of given activities, whether they're beneficial to you or not.
I don't know if you can be self-directed and have a non-beneficial or good learning event. No matter how small or weird something might be, you can gain something from it. You can learn something from it. I think as long as you're not placed into something against what you would like to do or are forced to learn something, I think everything has its benefit. Maybe you don't realize it at the time, but perhaps on reflection, you pick something up from it.
I'd say for the most part, no. And the reason that is because although at the time it may not seem beneficial, oftentimes a lot of the experiences that were just sort of idle play or cures for boredom or just doing whatever ended up being, at least for me, some of my best memories. And some of the things that I look back on now as an adult. But there's certainly an aspect of, doing things just for fun that ultimately won't benefit you in the long run, apart from the fact that it leads to a happier childhood. So I'd say all the stuff that kids do throughout the day at AVS mostly does benefit the student directly, and all the other things end up benefiting indirectly. Whether it's you do something kind of stupid and you learn a good lesson from it, or or whether it's just something that later you're like, wow, that was a waste of time. I'll never do that again. Ultimately, you benefit from all of those things.
What is or is not beneficial, like this is by its nature kind of a question with an inherent bias. Who gets to decide what's beneficial and what's not beneficial? In a Sudbury school and system, the democratic nature of it encourages kids to participate in the system and to create their own laws that they want to abide by, and to choose the activities that they're going to participate in. And I mean, how many of us as adults now can say that we always 100% of the time choose only activities that are beneficial to us? I mean, I think one of the greatest values that I took from AVS was being treated as an equal by adults. These are things that students are given the leeway to develop their own tools for, rather than being kind of like funneled through this bubble where certain things have arbitrary value. I mean, I think that AVS is a much better microcosm of what it's like to exist in the real world.
So I think it's really hard to predict what will be beneficial to someone else. And even beyond that, I think it's really hard to predict what will be beneficial to yourself. Thinking back to my time at the school, really anything that I did, including the stuff that might appear academic, like studying Aristotle, or, a project like developing film in the darkroom and printing my own photos and that kind of stuff. I don't know that you can make the argument that those things were really, in a direct kind of causal way, beneficial to me later on. That's certainly not why I did them. I did them because I loved them, and I happened to get something out of that. And I think that for most people, if they look back at their own lives, they probably didn't have a clear sense of why what they were doing benefited them today. And I think that that's pretty normal.
My internal baseline is that most people are curious. Most people are good, right? Like, that's just what I believe. And so, and I also think that we all do things that are bad for us, right? and both serve a purpose. And the goal is for that inner pilot light to be the leader, and that the things that we do maybe that aren't so good for us still serve that path somehow, right? And all of that is navigating being a human. And I think that the sooner we come to terms with that as individuals, the better we can then become at self-mastery and kind of modulating that for ourselves, so that we can strive to, be better people and brighter lights and all of that.
I would counter that question with another question, which is beneficial according to whom? Probably one of the hardest things that I think parents have to do when they send their kids to an alternative school, like a Sudbury school, like AVS, is trusting that their child is going to be fine and make the right choices. We don't always make the right choices, and you can't learn anything without making mistakes. You just kind of have to let go. I would argue that most of the things that they're going to do are going to be beneficial to them in some way. And really, the child is the only one who knows truly what's beneficial for them.
How do AVS students benefit from the time spent on computers or gaming?
As far as video games go, you learn so many skills from video games, like between physical skills like hand-eye coordination, like intuitive knowledge of technology. I mean, depending on what you play, you can learn about history, you can learn about programming, you can learn about, and video games, in most cases anyway, at least the ones that I always played, were more like interactive stories. So they taught me about things like storytelling. And I know friends who the only reason they ever learned how to read was because they wanted to read Final Fantasy playing video games, Because it's a fun motivational way to engage people in media.
So even if you're not learning anything specifically marketable while you're messing around on a computer, it builds such a solid foundation that it makes it vastly easier if you figure out something that you want to learn to get into it and build that skill after you leave AVS or while you're still there at any point. The foundation is there and you can use it.
And the first benefit I can think of is English. I think most of my English writing ability has come from communicating with people on the internet when IMing was a thing. That was something I used to do a lot. I used to email a lot as a kid, and it's something that I think comes naturally to humans, and a lot of parents will freak out about it. How are my kids going to learn how to read? I'm like, oh, how are they going to learn how to write? Because there are words all around them, and there are people that they want to talk to. And then for computers and gaming in that aspect, when you're playing a game as a kid, whether it's a board game, a card game, a video game, the whole point is trial and error, and it gives you a sense of determination. And I think a lot of AVS kids will try at something until they succeed, and a lot of that is attributed to they grew up trying things until they succeed, played lots of games, interacted with a lot of people.
I think computers are really important in this day and age. Even if you don't work in IT, you probably use a computer almost every day, if not every day, if not hours a day, be it writing or searching for something. I think it's hugely important that students have exposure and experience on computers. And I think gaming is similar. I think it's an important part for students to build communication skills in high stress environments, conflict resolution, strategizing. I think all of those can come from gaming and are excellent to learn as a student.
For me, primarily, one of the biggest things I gained from gaming and my time on the computer was a love for philosophy and history and a desire for deeper understanding and knowledge of things in life, and that's often not associated with something like games, but there's a lot of games that have some very deep and rich stories to tell, and gaming is what first got me asking questions like, what is the meaning of life? Why are we here? Why now? All these deeper questions that have no answers, and it got me really interested in the philosophical parts of life and helped me develop my own philosophy and way of life.
I can't imagine in the future that there will be any profession or any really pursuit that doesn't benefit from a basic competence in using computers. I think it's a really core skill, and I think that students at AVS discover that really early. With so many resources available to pursue, any topic, really to any level of depth through the internet, I think it's something that you just have to become fluent in as a human being, and it is just one more resource that they're able to apply without a lot of sort of clouded perception around it.
So I'd say that on the computer note, the students at AVS spend a lot of time on computers, both playing games and just basically just researching whatever interests them. I know I spent a ton of time just Googling whatever interests me that day, and there were certainly things that kept coming up that were, things that I ended up studying in college and things like that, like engineering. And I always looked that kind of stuff up. And that was just sort of the computer and the internet acted as sort of an open avenue to educating myself. And as far as gaming goes, I think a big benefit from gaming is both the culture within the school of the gaming, which is essentially a bunch of people that are similarly aged, pursuing a common goal in a certain video game, and talking about it and planning it and executing it. One of the main things that video games can teach us is, to quote Kurt Hahn here, to teach us tenacity and pursuit. And what I mean by that is oftentimes in video games, the whole point is that there's essentially a challenge or something hard to do, and you need to do it. But having the tenacity to figure out whatever, to look at the problem and come up with solutions and try things until it works, I think is probably the main thing you learn from a lot of video games. And that's certainly what I've taken away from them. And I still play a lot of video games.
Okay, so my partner is a teacher in a public school system here in Canada. Kids are on computers all the time. Computing has become an official part of the curriculum in the province that I live in. And it's kind of like, well, the whole world is on computers, so it would be impossible to not have kids be on computers at AVS. That's just how the world is. My observation of kids on computers or gaming at AVS was actually, I observed lots of like collaboration, working together. One person is playing some video game and is having a really hard time getting through a level, and somebody else steps in and gives them ideas and like points out what they could do, and they work together. It's just another activity, because we have this idea that sitting in front of a computer all day is a bad thing, but it's kind of like, actually, why don't we look at it from a different angle? I don't see it as that being a negative activity.
I wish that I played video games is my answer to that question. And I wish that I spent a lot more time on computers as a kid, because I am at a disadvantage, to be just very frank about it. Storytelling exists on the internet now, and in so many forms. And that's why I'm working in the tech industry right now, because it's what's going to change content distribution so that it works for everyone in a way that it's really fundamentally broken right now. The people on my team who are 10 years younger than I am, who are, some people would call like more digital natives, they grew up with this stuff more a part of their life day in and day out, just have a natural advantage over me.
Don't students at AVS get bored? And if so, what do they do about it?
Yeah, I think students get bored. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. I think it's a time to reflect and think deeply, even if it's as simple as, why am I bored? What can I do to prevent this boredom? What can I do to prevent it in the future? I think it's a good thing to be bored at times.
I got bored once, and so I graduated. Usually by the time you get bored with all that freedom, it means that you're ready to move on to the next step. I didn't get bored for a long time, and when I did get bored, it pushed me. So I felt it, and when I started to get bored, I went out and I got myself an internship with a local designer, so I just had to get my little ducks in a row and go do it. And then before I knew it, I had an internship, which led to jobs, which has led to opportunities through my school and everything else. When I got bored, I created stuff, because that is what kids do when they're bored. And boredom is actually really good for you, I think. Having spare time as a kid is developmentally useful. Whenever I was bored, I didn't have anybody else to look to entertain me. I had to figure it out myself. And because of that, I think I spent my time in much more valuable ways.
Oh, absolutely. I used to get bored all the time. And I think, in a way, I guess boredom is kind of the mother of invention at Alpine Valley. I think that's certainly why I learned how to play the piano and why I learned how to play the guitar. Boredom is not fun. It's what pushes you to kind of get out of your comfort zone and try something you wouldn't normally try because you have nothing to do.
I think that boredom occurs no matter what you're doing. I mean, whatever type of school you're in, you're going to get bored. Whatever type of work you're doing, you're going to get bored. Boredom is a key to finding ways to either prevent that boredom or finding new things to take on in its place. Mostly at AVS, I remembered getting bored when I got older, later when I was near the end of my time at AVS. And my personal way of handling it was going to the main room and striking up conversation with, Larry or any one of my fellow students in the main room, because that's what I think all of us grew to sort of love about AVS is that during downtime we could just go into that room and converse about anything.
I would say, hell yes, we get bored. But then we have the space to figure out what to do about it. And having that time at all, like the time to be bored, is such a gift. We, have a chance to explore different activities, but also maybe sit around at the main room table and talk for the day. If you're pursuing something at Alpine Valley, it's because you want to be doing it. It's because it's important to you. And that isn't really something you can say, in other educational environments, I don't think.
Yeah, absolutely. Students do get bored at AVS. And I think that that's actually one of the most important aspects of the school. Actually, I have a story about this. So when I first joined the school, I was, I think, 6 or 7 years old, and I had my first grade homework to do. And I had back then we did visiting weeks, and I had my visiting week, and I desperately wanted someone to assign me some homework because I had no idea what else I would do. And it was really pretty existential for me. I couldn't handle the idea that there wasn't something more valuable I could be doing with my time, which sounds weird, but that was kind of where I was. So it took me about a week to get to a place where I could find ways to entertain myself, and I could find things that I actually enjoyed doing instead of just feeling like I was meeting someone else's expectations, which was really kind of what I was already going down the path of craving constantly. So in that case, the boredom, people humored me, and they were very willing to sort of help me get through the hurdle of figuring out what I actually wanted to do. They didn't supply, an endless stream of things that I could just do instead of being bored.
They definitely get bored. I think all kids get bored. From my experience at AVS, boredom was a great opportunity to expand my horizons in interests, friends, and just activities in general. For me, boredom led to some of the weirdest and quirkiest adventures of my school time. Also led to spending a lot of time doing inflection and kind of just thinking about what I was interested in, and very systematically going through my thoughts and being like, oh, today I'm bored, but I'm not so bored that I'm really going to do that because that's like more boring. But this would be really fun today, so I'm going to go and build this fort or whatever. And so I think boredom is an opportunity to expand.
I think AVS students do get bored, just like everybody. Yeah, it's really important that they experience it because, thinking back, when I was at AVS, I think some of the best things that I did came out of being bored. I would write a lot, and when I was bored, I would just pick up my journal, my notebook and my pen, and I would just go at it. And, I probably wouldn't have gotten as much writing done if I hadn't been bored sometimes, So it's important. It's super important.
I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to all the graduates who joined me in these interviews. They took so much time out of their busy lives, and I think we created something very special together. Alpine Valley School and schools like us can be hard to fathom at first, and even once you understand, can be hard to explain. Sometimes it takes a while for the true weight of our educational revolution to sink in. My hope is that hearing from all these graduates with their unique perspective will help listeners understand why we do what we do here at school. For me, interviewing everyone on the show was a re-energizing experience, and several of the graduates said that it helped them to feel closer to the AVS community, even when they live far away. If you enjoyed this show, please consider leaving a comment on Facebook or sending your feedback to me directly at the show email address, podcast@alpinevalley.school.com. Your input is what keeps this show evolving and getting better all the time. Please also consider sharing this episode with a friend or a family member you think might benefit. As always, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this special episode. I'm Missa Gallivan. This is the Alpine Valley School podcast, and we'll be back again soon with more stories of real learning for real life.